there, unavailable to be a mayor. And in Twitter, you have one checkbox to make it a private account versus the default of public. Very few people, but it's a percentage of about 4 or 5% that will have theirs protected, and about half of those they either have just switched it from public to private or vice versa. So they're sort of rotating through. Foursquare doesn't have that. Foursquare doesn't have a make everything private, but they do have these type of things where you can select fewer things that you do. And the closest thing that Foursquare has to having privacy is going to be if you unclick that mayorship, because then you're not going to appear on this.
Sorry, can you just repeat that one more time? I'm sorry.
So a mayor is somebody who's been, in the last 60 days, been to that particular location the most. And there's little competitions on who gets that. If I unclick this box, then I'm never going to be eligible to be that, which means that my picture, the information that they show, so the mayors will also have your first name and last initial. They'll have some information about you that's part of, you become basically part of that venue's profile. And if you uncheck that, then you're not going to be part of that. The second thing is this shows who's here list. So again, this is a place, if I came to a mall and I wanted to see who was there, or I was at a conference and I check in, I might be able to look through that and see who of my friends are in the same spot. And that's an opportunity, maybe you didn't know they were there, and you could go looking for them or contact them and say, let's talk, let's have lunch, whatever. So this is a way you can opt out of that list. You can include me in my friends' status updates. So one of the things that's possible for the people who broadcast this is that it doesn't just say where they're at, it also says who else they know is there. And so you'll see this a lot with basketball games. Assembly Hall becomes a very popular place to check into. And you'll see something like this that will say, I'm at Assembly Hall with all these other people. Or they'll have a list, or 23 others. And if you don't want that type of thing, you can opt out. And I tend to opt out of that. And then you can let the local businesses go. And I don't know whether there's really a good reason not to let them know. Foursquare has a business component to it, which we won't cover today, but just know that businesses can come in and basically say, I am this venue, and I want access to those stats. I want to be able to interact with people that are coming in. I want to be able to contact the mayor and say, you now get free candy, whatever it happens to be.
Do they pay for that?
I believe that they do. That they have to go. They can't just go in and say that this is one of the revenue streams that they've got. And there is a lot of information in here that's worthwhile and ways that the businesses and the customers can connect with each other. But if you wanted to not let them know what it is, you can opt out of that as well. So this privacy profile is a really important part of it. And then you've got the give me an email when scenarios. I uncheck a lot of this stuff because with a lot of activity in town, if you not only have your Foursquare doing things, but also have your inbox saying, oh, this person is checked in, this person's checked in, it's a lot of information. But in certain circumstances, like if I get ousted as a mayor and I want to know that, now it's on. Now I'm going to go back and try to do that. It may be quickest to get that notification through email, and it may stand out if I uncheck a lot of these other things. And then the Foursquare newsletter, of course. And then we've got linked accounts. So I signed in with Facebook, so it already knows that it's an account. I can go in here and undo that if I wanted to. I have not connected it with Twitter. And there's really no reason to connect it to Twitter as far as I'm concerned, because I'm not mining my friends out of that, and I'm not reporting back to that. But if you were going to do either one of those, this would be a good thing to connect. And then I've got these connections at the bottom, which basically means when I use this, I have to let Foursquare know that it's okay for this phone to be authorized to access my information on Foursquare. And when I do that, I'll see something in here that, the API documentation, Foursquare for iPhone, so this is what that is. If at any point I say I'm done with this, I could go in and revoke access and it wouldn't affect anything. I don't have to delete the whole account to do that. There's something here called Memo Lane, which I like a lot. It's a collection of all of your digital footprint, and it does it as a timeline. So when you upload a photo, when you check in, that you can have this sort of thing that you can go back and look at. It's a very cool site, and that's why that's in that list, is I've authorized that site can talk to my data here as well. All right, so before I go further with this. We can't show a check-in here, and this is too small to do it, but I don't know if you could see that big green button. That's basically what you're doing, is you're going in and checking in. And at that moment, you can add some things to it if you want. You can go in and say, this is what I'm doing here, add a little note to that. And it will show up, if I went to the history here, for me, I don't do it often, but I do it. Yeah, so like here, with Buzz Crick Chumley, I had a meeting there, and it said TEDx today, cell battery power probably won't get me home later today. You know, so I was just sort of announcing that, but I was also wanted to know, for my future reference, why I was there, and it was for a TEDx meeting. Also, I can see other people who were here as well, or they can have comments throughout that.
Why would you want to know for future reference that you were at Buskirk at that point? What's the point of that?
Well, I believe very strongly that we're moving into a reflective community with this data.
It's like journaling?
Yeah, in a way it is. Our data is not just what we're doing at that moment. It's about creating a footprint that you can see over time. There was a very interesting post that came up just in the last couple of days about a guy that was suffering from cancer who ended up dying, but he wrote his own obituary. And it was talking about, you know, what he would want to say, but it was a very interesting use of the media, and now that site becomes an archive. Facebook has this problem a lot, and they've had a lot of these other social media, that it's not just the users who are using it, that things are going to happen. People are going to die, and who takes care of that data?
Oh,
what
right.
does that become?
Right. Yeah.
So sometimes those become shrines. There's a way that on Facebook now you can say, you know, I think you still have to prove a birth or a death certificate, but there's ways that you can change the status of that account to create a sort of a permanent record there. And that's something that's valuable. You know, if you could go back and look at some of these things, or have the voice of the person that you're missing, I mean, that could be very powerful stuff. And just for your own benefit, I've been creating, you know, Flickr and YouTubes and blog posts for over a decade now, depending on when the services started. And I can go to Memo Lane, and I can go back to points in time and, you know, look, like on my birthday 2 or 3 years ago, what was I doing on each one of those things? And those are good ways, and that's why sharing your location can have value to you, or having notes. A lot of this is about what value you can bring to it yourself.
It's what people used to do when they wrote in a journal and said, today I went to Soma and had the best coffee ever, or blah, 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 whatever. Yeah.
Only now you do it with this instead of a pen and a little book.
Yeah.
And you have the ability, the option to share it.
Yeah.
You can make it, and you may find that there's connections that show up that you didn't know about. And with social media, that's one of its key values. All right, so let's really quickly look here. We've got the badges that we talked about. We can look at stats. So this gives me some of my own. This is like a personal view of the business one. So it has some things that say when I'm checking in, new places that I've discovered. It will give me some percentages. I go to like informatics and the same places in Bloomington a lot. So it's not a very wide variety for the most part. But it gives me some stats that when you look at other people's as well, their profiles, these give you some way to compare how they're using the system. Some top friends. So the other thing that they added was all of your friends are sort of in a race over the last 60 days or last week, that you can see how many check-ins that they have, and there's a point total. Not every check-in is worth just 1 point. You can get new ones for going to new places, and at least the only time I ever got into that was when we went to New Orleans, and I actually had a lot of check-ins. But I found it sort of interesting that I was rooting for myself. But I got up to number 3. That was right after South by Southwest, so there were a lot of other people doing the same thing.
So the 6X means you were there 6 times?
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly that. And if you see, you know, Meg Ryan in a store or something, and you happen to be doing this, these are things that become.
That's when you come to after you pass by.
Exactly. I can't actually do that in that moment. So do you have any questions about this? It's a really, it's a tough one to demo because most of it is done on the phone. But for the purposes of our game, going through this part of just creating stuff, maybe trying to find some people, seeing what other people are doing, or talking to people on your team, because there's probably somebody that has one of these devices and that's using it. And whether they're using Foursquare, they have the capability of using it. So looking at some of this stuff would be a good thing.
Memo Lane connects to multiple spaces.
Yes.
Facebook, Twitter,